just because you buy a lot doesn't mean you can build on the whole thing. And that's because of setbacks. So let's talk about what they are and why they matter. I'm Tiffany Weber, a real estate attorney in Mooresville, North Carolina at Thomas & Weber. Let's jump right in to setbacks and what they are. All right, so a setback, as you can see on this page right here, I'm showing two lots. So imagine this is your standard residential neighborhood. You got two neighboring lots. The dark, not dashed lines are the lot lines. And then the dashed lines represent the setbacks, meaning however many feet from the lot line, let's say it's 10 feet from the side, 15 feet from the front and rear. It could be different depending on the lot. You can't build in that area. So that means that the shaded or the hatched area here in pink, that's where you can actually build. And let's talk about where first do you find the setbacks? How do you know what they are? Well, if your neighborhood is platted, you might be able to see the setbacks shown on the plat. They might be depicted like these dashed lines, or they might be noted on the side of the plat saying the setbacks are this much from the side, this much from the front, this much from the rear. You may also find the setbacks in the CC&Rs, or the covenants, conditions, and restrictions for the community. So if you have a neighborhood that has restrictions, those restrictions might tell you how far from the side and the rear and the front you are allowed to build. So those could tell you the setbacks. You can have restrictions that are not necessarily in covenants, conditions, and restrictions. They can also be found in a deed. So if a prior deed says, okay, you can build in this area, you may also see the setbacks there. Finally, you may see them in zoning. And zoning sets forth, all right, if you have a residential zoning, this is the density that you can have per acre. These are the setbacks you have to have on each lot. And why is that? Let's talk about why do you need setbacks? And I think one of the main reasons is to have a common scheme of development within a community. And that's so that, all right, say you want to build a house and you're going to have it off of the road a little bit and you're going to have it off the lot line a little bit. What if your neighbor said, I want to build my house right up on the lot line and right up at the front of the house? Then you're driving through this neighborhood that's supposed to be consistent, and you don't know what you're going to get. So the idea is these developers wanted things to look similar to make the neighborhoods more attractive. So that's one thing, as a common scheme of development. And then also, you see there's this space in which you can't build. Utilities could go in there. So that's another reason. So you could have utility easements located within these setbacks so that the providers can get in there and run utilities to your property. So those are not the only reasons for setbacks, but those are some of the common ones. And then finally, what if you violate these setbacks? So let's say you're over here on this lot. These are your setbacks, but you build your house like this. Well, you didn't build it within a setback, so you're violating pretty much all of this. Maybe it's not this extreme. I've seen it much less extreme, where maybe it's just a tiny little corner that violates a setback. What do you do in those instances? Well, depending on if the statute of limitations has passed, there's a lot of analysis that goes into this, but the most catastrophic being you have to rebuild. You're not allowed to do that. So maybe the zoning authority says, you got to fix that. So hopefully you've got just one of those very minor things that can be easily fixed. But if you don't, then you're running into issues of, okay, can I get a variance? A variance means that you are granted some relief from, in this case, the zoning, in which the zoning authority says, yes, you did not do this correctly, but you didn't create the problem and you meet some other requirements. We are going to cut you a break. In this instance only, you're allowed to keep your structure there. And then another option is, all right, let's say none of those things go well. You can't get a variance. It's not possible for you to rebuild. You may have to go to court to get some relief. So by a declaratory judgment, where you're asking a judge to say, please say that my house can stay where it is. Or perhaps, say your builder or some other person is involved that is the reason why your house violates the setbacks. Maybe you have to go after them to try to get made whole so that you can then comply with the zoning requirement. Now, sometimes setbacks can vary. So you may have the zoning setbacks, which are here in the black dashed lines, but what if the covenants have a more restrictive setback? So let's say, we'll just imagine the front and rear are the same, but your covenants say that you have to be further away from the side than what the zoning says. What do? Well, you have to abide by the more restrictive guideline there. So you would have less area in which to build than even the zoning said. So depending on if you have an HOA or however your restrictions were set up, you may be asking all of your neighbors for permission to have built within those setbacks so that you don't have a restriction violation going forward. So those are the different areas, or plat restrictions and zoning are where places you can find your setbacks. Why do you have the setbacks? To give you some space between your neighbors, to have a common scheme of development, let utility providers in there so they can run utilities to your property. What do you do if you violate? You may have to rebuild, you may have to seek a variance, you may have a lawsuit. So hopefully you got some value from this video. If you want to learn more about real estate law and how it affects you as a homeowner or a real estate agent, watch this video.